Hello and welcome to Good Vibrations here on the YouTube channel. You're listening to me, Phyllis Brown. I am the creator of Good Vibrations, which is just my musings of what I feel is happening or what's important to me. Hopefully, it will have a positive reflection for you also. So, this week has been about the topic of structure. And what does that mean? And that was really brought up by a really lovely friend who I had the joy of having a wonderful coffee with and on Sunday just past. And the coffee hatch up just turned into this really dynamic conversation that got me thinking and had me thinking about, well, what are my structures? And a structure is a way of being, and we're given structure in our life. Children need structure. So as a child, you are given structure on how to play, how to educate yourself, what's right, what's wrong. We're given boundaries, which is a structure. And then as we become adults, we formulate our own structures in terms of who we are as a person, what is permissible, what isn't permissible, what our boundaries are. So that's a structure in itself. And then we go into workplaces where there's already a structure. And from her perspective, it was about how people sticking to an old structure are going to be left behind. And if they don't change or move with the times, that they'll find that the old way of thinking or the old way of being won't serve a purpose in their life. And so we have to create change. So I talked about that just very slightly in my podcast from last week, in which I talked about changing the way I'm thinking for the dragon year and doing things slightly differently. And I can see the positive outcomes of that, as can my partner, because I shared my thoughts of, well, I'm going to change the way I think about this. I'm going to change the way I'm going to do this. And he can see that that dynamic is really working now, just in that short term. So we need to, on some level, so we're not left behind. We need to look at our own structure. And what does that mean for us? If we're doing things out of habit because it's a habit, do we need to change that structure in our life? Do we need to continue with that habit? Does it serve a purpose? Or do we need to change and do something differently? And we can sort of move that process out to our loved ones on that micro level and create new structures that are positive, that are productive, so that we don't feel left behind. And you can certainly see if you've outgrown some of the structures that you have, especially in your friendships. When some friendships, you have those conversations and they're going nowhere or you don't have anything to say anymore. That's the old structure, the old way of being. So we need to maybe find new friendships that encourage us to explore who we are and give us opportunity for change. And I felt really enthused by what she was saying. I felt really caught up in it and have been examining some of the structures that I have, both in my personal life, within my partnership, but I've then been able to then look at that macro level, that bigger picture stuff of, well, what's the new structure at work? And we've changed the structure within our family business. And that's had a wonderful positive benefit. But then we can see changes globally. And that takes me to a conversation with another friend in the UK. So interestingly, my friendship coffee catch up on Sunday was about the micro level looking at self. And my conversation with my friend in the UK was the macro level, the global level, seeing global change. And she's very involved in the medical world, writing papers on vaccines and effects, etc., etc. Um, and so she's always looking at that global aspect and about the structure of medicine, the structure that we've all been put into. And I have to say, with COVID, it was very structured. We had very specific rules that we either did or we didn't do, and then there were consequences for that. So that's that almost like that childlike behavior. That's what we do with our children. We give them a set of boundaries, and if they don't adhere to that, well, then there's a consequence, there's a punishment of some sort. And she really got me thinking. She was talking about um, the structure in terms of the financial industry. And we've seen changes within the structure of the financial world in terms of, well, what does money actually mean? What is money? And it's that process of, is it electronic thing bits that we have, tokens, if you will, that we trade for goods? um, the financial world is changing in terms of the paper money and coinage not being the way to go, but it being a cashless society, it being an electronic process. And then, of course, on that financial level, we then have the allocation of wealth globally, where we have the 1% of the 1% who have access to everything, whilst the vast majority of people have very limited access due to the financial constraints and how we are valued in terms of our input and how they're valued in terms of their input. So the financial aspect construct is changing, as is the medical construct, as is society. Society is changing. And the structure around society is becoming more dynamic. And this all started in 2012. So in 2012, there was the harmonic convergence globally, where, as a human race and an echelon of the human race, we were all asking for this fifth dimensional vibration. And it's taken over a decade for that fifth dimensional vibration to actually anchor itself as we come into the age of Aquarius, as we leave the age of Pisces behind. And so this new age of man is coming to the fore. But what does that actually mean? What is fifth dimensional living? This new structure. Because we need to get on board. If we're still third dimensional living, where we're living in the here and now, where we are meeting our basic needs, and that's about it. We're not soul searching, let's say, looking for the reasons, the why in our life. If we're not searching for that why, because that's a fifth dimensional thing. So why did that happen? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Where am I going? That's all fifth dimensional thinking. Fifth dimension is that we're here, but we can transcend time and space and see ourselves somewhere else without being bogged down in the minutiae of everyday life, which is third dimensional thinking. And I think that structure is something that we're going to be really made aware of. And we can see that both in the micro level, from my friend's perspective of my coffee catch up, of so we need to change personally and decide what fits for us right now. And if it doesn't fit, then we need to just keep pushing our new agenda, creating a new structure. And when people will either get it or they won't get it. So they'll either be in your life or they won't be in your life. And then with talking to my friend on Friday, with the global structure, what is it that we're actually seeing? What are we seeing globally? I think what really fascinates me is the suppose the European movement right now. More countries are joining the German farmers. because they're rebelling against the structure, the old structure that is being imposed on them by the government there. And so other countries are hearing about this process and are joining the the mass consciousness which they're creating. And that's that octopus thought process. So for those of my lovely Acturian students who are listening to this podcast, I talk about the octopus thought process. There's the hurricane thought process, then there's the octopus where we're thinking of one thing and the next thing comes to us and so on. And so, one person's thinking, then more people are thinking, then everyone's thinking. And suddenly other people are joining in, they're seeing and they're banding together and they're trying to create this new structure. They are trying to alert the governments that actually the old structure that the governments are trying to impose on us and impose on them are no longer valid. And I feel that's going to be really, really important. I feel that's a really important message that we need to take note of right now, the word structure. We really do. And I think on that macro level, if we take war, for instance, we have two major conflicts going on at the moment, regardless of what it's called, one in Europe and one in the Middle East. And the way that they're going about that, the heads of state that are dictating this is the battle plan and this is how we're going to do it. That's old structure. Old structure. Land grab is an old thing. It stems back to Genghis Khan and the Romans and the Vikings. It's ancient. That's an ancient structure, which may not necessarily be valid now. And so therefore we see people in their thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, standing up and going, actually, no, this isn't good. This has to stop. This isn't how we do this anymore. We cannot live like this anymore. That's the new structure. So when you're participating in your day-to-day life, I want you to really think about the word structure and what is serving a purpose in your life, because we can change our structure and it will cascade down to our family, to our friends, and it might spark them to change their structure, which then has that wonderful process, that sort of ripple effect, if you will. But I do think the word structure is going to be the buzzword or something very similar to that word for 2024-25. And it's interesting, quite often I have picked a word and sort of said that in my newsletter. Oh, actually, this is the process. This is what we're doing. So this will be the buzzword, whether it was mindfulness or authenticity or authentic self, those phrases. I think we've come through the whole self-awareness now that those phrases are now got done and dusted. But structure, structure, I feel within the mainstream media, within your TikToks or your Instagrams or your Facebook pages, just watch for this word coming forward, whether it's deconstruction or structure coming into place, being imposed, or people changing the whole structure of who they are. I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic year, and that's the dragon energy. I think it's going to be a year where, we always talk about taking responsibility for ourselves, but I think it's deeper than that. It's not just about taking responsibility for yourself, but it's actually portraying and reflecting to those around you who we actually are becoming. And that's fifth dimensional living as well. So there's lots going on, lots to think about. I'd love to hear your thoughts and if I'm making sense. I hope I'm making sense. I always hope I make sense. But it would be good to just see and hear what you guys take from this little process that I'm talking about, and how you can see that coming into your own life as we move forward. So I'm going to finish with that ending there. Still moving through my beautiful gift, from my coffee catch-up friend, and this is a lovely saying. So it says, "You may dance like no one's watching, but everyone's watching because you're amazing." And I think that's really lovely. I think sometimes we forget who we are as people or how other people see us. And dancing could be anything. Dancing could just be that soft message, that holding someone's hand, that helping someone in need. A dance can be anything. It isn't literally about dancing, but it can be lots of other things as well. So that will be our thought to take you through the weekend and into the week, as we move forward. So until the next time, have a really amazing week. Be really good to yourself. And yeah, look at the structures that you have around you and if they are now no longer serving a purpose. Until the next time, take care for now.